Jim Erickson.
Okay. Well, it's an honor to be here with this illustrious group of people. It's special to see so many friends, old friends, and new faces out here. And as Jim said earlier, TFPA is one of those things. It's really not a fire thing, but it's something I've always had a passion for. Is how do we help take care of the land, and how do we reach out, and how do we help our neighbors? And it's important that we think about it, because when we put on our 2 workshops, we talked about things, and this is a phrase Gary coined for us. It's a path. It's just a tool to care for the land, because if we don't, the land won't care for us. And in our introduction there, we talk about it. We look back that at one time this was all Indian country, before Columbus. But as Gary showed us a little bit ago, this morning, and you look, it was to look to your elders and to learn from your elders, and the stories they tell and the songs they sing. But he also, he talked about comes, not just the wisdom comes from generation. And I country. I don't know that you were ever, or any of us were ever relieved of our responsibilities to care for Mother Earth. We're a spaceship here on Earth. We can't leave. What we do to the land is going to be done to us. So it's important that we recognize that as we move forward, because there's some very great treasures worth saving. You can talk to those people from Tule River, and this is some of their treasures, but there's treasures everywhere we go in Indian country. There's special things to save, and there's special things in our national forests and our national parks and all of our public lands. But as you've heard, and you're going to hear later, and I won't dwell long, our forests are in trouble. This is the most recent Forest Service report, and it doesn't look good. Things don't look good. And as Gary said, we don't have much time. Who's going to address these problems? If not Indian country, who? We know fires are increasing. We know there's insects and disease outbreaks are increasing. We know climate is changing and drought is happening. There's some tough things happening. Is this what you want happening on your land as you go out there and manage it? And it's important to recognize, and I'm a fire guy, so I got to put this plug in. Fire has been here on the land for a long time, and a lot of the problems we face are because we put fires out for 150 years. Well, do we have another 150 years to undo what we've done? I think Gary put it very, very succinct, because we don't have a very big window. Things are happening faster than we know. And if you go back, and if you were in our fire workshop yesterday, you heard from 4 different presenters of different regions of the country. And I asked them, when you get your presentation, talk about what fire was for your ancestors. Talk about what you're doing and living with fire today, and talk about how you're going to go forward with fire in the future. Because there's a lot of opportunities to use fire. I mean, this comes out of the cohesive strategy. All those beige areas are areas where fire could be reintroduced more effectively as a tool. Not anytime, not anywhere, not under any circumstances, but over time we could use fire. And I put that in there because, bad things are happening too. Unfortunately, we weren't, Governor Chavaria wasn't able to come and join us this symposium, but we had the opportunity, ITC, to go there and look on it. And their lands had 3 fires over 10 years that came from Forest Service and, Los Alamos onto their reservation. Burnt over 70% of the reservation. And this is a picture of a fishing pond. And if you can find some water in that picture, please show me. I mean, all I see is rubble, dirt, trees, and somewhere in there is probably some equipment buried. It just shows you how important it is that we don't waste time taking care of our land. And I throw this one in just to preempt you as I get ready to talk about what we're doing on TFPA, but we have some fuel problems in our nation, and everything in orange and beige has fuel issues. I don't know if there's a reservation that isn't covered by this thing, including Grand Portage, Tim. It's right up there. Fuel problems are everywhere in our country. And we've got to be able to deal with it because we talked about some of the things about, jobs and economies and communities. So what do we do? I mean, I think we know our nation's resources are under attack, but we know that tribes have been around for thousands of years. And I go back and I think back in history, when fire got taken away from Indian country, they didn't stop managing their lands. They adapted. Timber harvest. We're the Intertribal Timber Council. Tribes have been more adaptive than any land management agency that I know of other than maybe states. They always tend to adapt to what they need to do to manage their resources. And the tribes, you have reserve rights because all that was tribal land at one time. And I think you have the responsibility to not lose sight of taking care of those lands. And TFPA is a great tool, and it offers, a solution to expand that management style and those management applications out onto our neighboring federal lands. But I heard it from Butch, I heard it from Jim, I heard it from Gary. We got to do things bigger. We're not at the pace and scale. We keep doing what we're doing, we are in a crash. We're heading for a crash. And we got to do a better job of planning. And we got to do it faster. We got to pick up the pace. There's not more money necessarily for a whole bunch more planning. We've got to figure out how to plan better and plan faster and plan quicker. And still, as Butch shared, we've got to do it in a partnership manner. We've got to take care of it. Brian Rice came to our TFPA and says, pick up the pace and scale. We got to get moving. And that's good to hear from our federal partners. They too want to do what we all want to do. We want to take care of the land while we have the chance. We need to restore, and this just comes off Gary, restore tribal stewardship. That's probably our best hope. Take it and expand it. Don't stop at our boundaries. So now some a little bit of background on TFPA. About 2 years ago, we did a review. We worked with the Forest Service. We did some surveys. We got over 100 people responding from the Forest Service, the BIA, and tribes. We did telephone interviews. We did site visits. And we came up with a long report, and I'll have a link to that report. You can go on the ITC website and read all the detail. It's not quite 300 pages like IFMAT, but it's a pretty thorough report. And the key thing we found in there that stuck out more than anything was we really don't understand TFPA, so we're trying to interpret it individually, and we come up with too many interpretations, too many variations on what TFPA was. And so we needed training, but not just training. We need experts, and there's not a lot, but we need experts to help make sure these projects move forward, and we learn from other people's experiences as we move forward. So we got together in 2014 and put together a proposal working with the Forest Service about let's try a new approach. Let's go out and have workshops where we bring people together face-to-face, tribes in their neighboring ranger districts or their national forest, and learn about TFPA, and learn about what the regulations the Forest Service has, and learn what we can do to make things happen. But then roll up our sleeves and really do some work while we're at those workshops. We brought together in Spokane and Albuquerque 15 tribes in national forest and went away with 15 projects started. Now, maybe that's not a big number, but that's 15 we didn't have before. And what really got me, I've been to a lot of ITC workshops, and there's great workshops. We have great workshops all the time. I've never been to two better workshops than these two. To see enthusiasm, to see common vision between neighbors that, has always been there. It just hadn't been shared and communicated. It's exciting to see that. I went away exhausted because there was so much energy in a week. And it was different. Everybody was a little different. Some were timber harvest, some were use fire, some were all kinds of applications that were different for different parts of the country, and it excited me. Because when we went away, people were saying, the BLM was coming to us and the Forest Service were coming to us. What's it going to take to have more workshops? Well, we'll work that out. But that tells me one thing, is they want you to help them manage their land. I was so impressed by the partnerships that they were reaching out. We had Brian Rice there for both of them, and Brian did an awesome job, of supporting this. We've got the support. We just need to figure out how to go forward and to make it happen on the land. So I want to share some key principles with you I think are real important, and we've heard them before. It's all about the landscapes. It's not about my responsibility shouldn't stop at the edge of my land, because everything that's outside could affect me. Insects don't care where that boundary is. Wildlife don't care. Fish don't care. Air don't care. Water don't care. Nothing cares. Nature has no limitations on boundaries. Boundaries are our paradigm. And we operate with those paradigms too much. We stay in our islands and operate. That's not getting the job done. We've got to be bigger thinkers, and we've got to reach out. Butch told you about the key of collaboration, and I've seen it work. I'm seeing it work more and more. I was a skeptic for many years, but I'm starting to see, and one of the greatest examples we had in Albuquerque was the Isleta project. And Isleta is 20-some collaborators come together. And they took a while. It took them a couple years to talk about, what they wanted to do. But once they reached that conclusion of some common themes and some common objectives, they were able to move forward. And what amazed me is, as they talked, all these different funding sources started coming their way. And I'll tell you what, I believe, and I hope you don't lose sight of this, money is limited, but it's going to go where people and partnerships are operating. So if you want to see new money, or the old money, what's left, it's going to go where big landscape things are happening. And so I really encourage you to look at that. The other things you need to make sure, and the opportunities are there, National Forest Plan revisions are happening. In some places, tribal forest plans are happening, revisions. Don't miss the opportunity to work together. Don't try to figure out your common plans after two separate plans and try to make them mesh. Now is the time to work for landscape level planning. And I'll tell you, I really appreciate Gary coming up with this concept of let's get people face to face, because I've never seen more progress face to face. I spend a lot of my time on your behalf, conference calls and webinars, and yeah, they work, but nothing works like face to face. Go meet your neighbor. And I remember Jim Durgalo said, heck, they're not just my neighbors. Hell, our kids play on the same baseball team. And getting to know people at that level is real important. It's not just about, I have to. Jim Peterson and that talked about telling your story. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more important than telling your story. And we're talking here, we're all the choir, and we're telling stories. Sure, I expect you guys to believe some of the stuff I say, because we're all resource managers. But I had the privilege of going and participating in the state of Washington's Ag Forestry Leadership Program. And the one thing that's always stuck in my mind is 98% of all the people in this country have nothing to do with natural resources or agriculture. Food's in the store, lumber's in the lumber yard. They have no clue. And so if we just talk to the choir, we're facing uphill battles. Challenges come more from those who are outside. And we need to tell that story broader. And Jim's series that he's talking, the Evergreen Magazine, those are some excellent articles. Very diverse opinions talking about the reason to work together and the reason to collaborate. So I hope people can tell stories. Because Kevin Bond, if Kevin, raise your hand out there. Where are you at? Right there, the big cowboy hat. You want to have a guy tell you a great story about what his grandma did for him and told him about his sequoias that he has to take care of, it'll break your heart. He has a real passion for taking care of the land, so I encourage you to get with him. But every one of you has a story. You've got to get out and you've got to tell it. People want to know. They want to know why it's so important for Indian country. The other things, TFPA cannot succeed as a tool if it's just an extra project. And that's the sense I hear with so many people. It's an extra project. It's got to be part of your regular scope of work. And the same thing with the Forest Service. They have a program of work. If it's not part of their program of work, it's going to be on the low priorities. The other thing we learned, and NEPA and ESA and National Historic Preservation Act and the Endangered Species Act and that, they're not the problem. The problem is we don't engage people early enough and often enough. And there are ways to make this process move faster. The Farm Bill's added some new categorical exclusions, and and the Healthy Forest Restoration Act. There are ways, and that's one of the things we hope to help people get through these things. We can't plan like they did at Tule River for 10 years to do a little tiny treatment. That isn't going to make it. You know, you can't do things forever. Other thing, and it came out of Tule River also, is, you know, that tribes, you need to manage things that are sensitive for you. If there's information that's sensitive, you got to be very careful about what you release. And the federal agencies need to protect information that's shared, but within the extent of the law they can. And so you need to understand what their rules and limitations are. Freedom of Information Act and how that will apply. The other thing that's really important, and you know, it's doing business differently. It's not using the authorities we have in Indian country, the 638, where you can work with the BLM or Park Service and, you know, get money transferred over. It's a whole different system. And we need to know and understand contracts, grants, and agreements. We need to know about those. And so you got to familiarize yourself with this. It is stepping out of your comfort zone. But most important, and we got a lot of champions in this room. You've heard from several people. But who's the champion for you out there? Do you stay within your comfort zone, or do you reach out and do something that takes a little bit more effort? Do you have the passion to do what it takes? Identify those champions and key players. If you don't have them, you shouldn't waste your time. And it's really important, you know, we've heard over and over again, but everywhere we look, if you can have a healthy forest product industry, and that's why we have the Anchor Forest Project, is that helps to get treatments done. If the land will help pay for the treatment, we'll make much more progress. If we wait for somebody to give us money, then we're not going to go very far. We'll never tackle this problem we're facing just waiting for federal funds. And so what's next for ITC? Well, right now we just finished the workshop, so less than a month ago. So we're on that time, and we're going to come up with some reports and recommendations. We're looking at the need for additional workshops. So if anybody is interested and would like a workshop to come to your area, I mean, the Forest Service has already suggested several, the BLM has suggested, come let me know, because I need to know that people are interested and would like to at least learn about it. That doesn't commit you to TFPA, but if you don't understand it, I mean, it's hard to get involved. And then what we need to do is provide that technical expertise, and it's part of these workshops is developing the next wave of technical experts. So hopefully we'll have a broader base that can help people, because if you don't understand it, it can be scarier, and it might be easier to not even touch it, not even approach TFPA and the opportunities it presents. We're also working really closely with the Forest Service, and it'll come on a report, but one of the things that came out of Albuquerque is people are spending all their time chasing this little pot of money and that little pot of money and that pot of money and that pot of money, and you might chase 7 pots of money and only get 3, and it only pays part of your project, and people are spending, resource managers aren't managing resources, they're being administrators, and so we're going to try and work with that, and I sit on the National Strategy Committee for you on your behalf, and that's one of the things that we've introduced. We're going to bring it to WIFLC Butch shortly, is we need to make it easier to find the funding and not chase it. It takes a lot of time and energy. We're going to ask the Forest Service to help us, because they've done it a couple times, and put on training so we better understand their contracts, grants, and agreement, and the environmental compliance. So, and we're going to look for opportunities that we can utilize, you know, the 638 authorities for money transfer and partnerships. So what's next for you? I encourage you to get involved. You need to let us know if you're interested in TFPA. We'll put on workshops. We've got a couple planned, or at least in the early stages. But go out and get to know your neighbors. If you don't dialogue with them now, get out there and get to meet them. Identify areas of common risk and start developing strategies. But you have a choice of how you want your legacy to be. How do you want to be remembered out here on the land? Do you want to be, I just did enough to get my job done? Because at some point, we've got to bring balance. It's important. Gary talked to us about economies and the environment and communities, and how we bring balance to all that. And that's really what's important if we're going to survive in the future with climate change and everything. So I'll give you my words of wisdom. We got to be more efficient. We got to be more effective, more creative, more cooperative. We got to be more diligent, and we got to be more responsible if we're going to get things done. And we had some great people. I mentioned Brian, but John Crockett from the Forest Service was a key player. Gary and Jim Dergalo were very key players. And we were very fortunate to have Sonia Tomez and Stephanie Lucero on our team. Like I said, the ITC website has that. But at the end, you have a choice of how you want to be remembered. You could be a bystander. You could be confused and bewildered. You could be frustrated. You can be a hapless victim. Or you can be a champion. Thank you.